Okay, girls, we're on to lesson 2. So the last day we were looking at just women and work and how their work lives changed from the beginning of the century towards the end of the century, and how they went from being mainly domestic workers working as servants in other people's houses to then starting to work in factories and having more job opportunities, such as nurses, teachers, etc. Okay, so today we're going to look at education. So you can put that as your title in your notes, education. And if we look at these, you can take down these notes that are on this slide here. In the early 20th century, women had limited access to education. In the early 1900s, there were only 300 women in colleges and university compared with 3,000 men. So we're talking about for the whole of Ireland. 300 women were at college or third level compared to 3,000 men. One of the reasons for this is that you had to pay to go to school. So if you wanted to go to school, you had to pay school fees. So it was more for the people who could afford it. But a big change happened in 1967 when free secondary education was introduced for everyone. So everybody had a chance then to go to secondary school from 1967. So this had a huge impact for the education of girls. Before this, if a family could only afford to send 1 or 2 children to school, they would more than likely send the boys rather than the girls. So female education was kind of put aside until the 1960s. So we're going to look at our own school. Obviously, our school is a school for educating girls. So we're going to look a little bit about the history of St. Mary's New Ross. So again, you can take this down in your notes as an example of how our own school has changed over time in its education. Okay, so the secondary school dates back to 1917, where it became a secondary school for the first time. So the subjects that you could study at the beginning were Irish, English, maths, history, geography, home economics, crafts, art, music, religion, commerce, and typing. So commerce is another name for business studies. So if you compare that to the subjects that you can do today, I'm sure you can come up with a lot of different subjects that you can do today compared to what you could do in 1917. Okay, so just try and think in your minds now what subjects that you could do today in school that are not on that list. And particularly for Leaving Cert, what kind of subjects can you do that aren't on that list? Now, in 1926, it opened up a boarding school to complement the day school. So in the first years as a secondary school, it was for day pupils only. And then in 1926, it also became a boarding school. Now, just in your own minds, I want you to think, what kind of an impact did that have, the fact that it was now a boarding school? Okay. Think back to life 100 years ago or 90-something years ago. Think about transport. Think about where people were living. Okay. What impact did it have, the fact that the school was now a boarding school? Until 1927, all the teachers in the school were nuns. So if you were in the school up until 1927, you were being educated by a nun. So you would have nuns teaching you the different subjects. But I'm sure you can appreciate that there was a huge religious element to the school. So religion would have been very important. Now, the first male teacher didn't come until 1968. So, for a long time, the school was run by women. At the beginning, nuns, and then after that, lay teachers. So that was women who weren't religious. And the first male came in 1968. So again, if you think about the difference between then and now and how much it has changed. It wasn't until 2001 that the school got its first non-religious principal. So the first principal that wasn't a nun came in 2001. Okay, so girls, we're going to look at some sources of information now. We're going to look at some different documents dating back to the mid-1920s. When you look at these 4 different documents now, they're a little bit blurry. They're kind of hard to see, so you'll have to look very closely. What do they tell us about the differences in male and female education? Okay, so in 100 years ago, how were women and men treated in terms of education? What subjects were studied by both groups? And were there different subjects for boys and girls? Okay, so girls, if you look at this one here, if you look at the date at the top there, these are the returns for June 1926. And June 1927. So we're in the mid-20s here. And this is special fees or grants for extra or other branches. So these are funding that are given to different departments in schools. Okay, so if you look there, look at the the branch basically means the subject or the subject department, okay? So if you look down here at the different types of subjects and the numbers of schools that were getting funding for these subjects. Okay, so the first column there, number of schools paid for the school year, that tells you the number of schools that were teaching these subjects and were getting money for these subjects. So have a little look there in your own minds. What were the subjects that were getting the most funding? And looking at this list here, do you think these were schools for girls or schools for boys? Okay, the next document that we're going to look at here, these are all primary sources, by the way. So these are from a Department of Education report. From 1925 to 27. So this is secondary education statistics. So what it has here, it has for the 2 different years, school years, it has the number of boys' schools, the number of girls' schools, and the number of mixed schools. Okay, and it tells you how many children were in education in total. Okay, so what do you notice here then in these slides? Anything interesting that you notice? Okay, how would it be different in a breakdown or looking at different schools today? Why do you think there were so few mixed schools? Okay. Now, this is a bit hard to read. It's a little bit blurry. I tried to make it as clear as possible, but this is leaving certificate subjects for boys. So we have 1926 and we have 1927. So it gives you your list of subjects down there the left-hand side. Okay, so you can have a little look at those subjects there that were available. And if you look here, this tells you the total of people who took each subject there in 1926. And this is the total in 1927. Okay, we have percentage passed with honours is here. This is the total examined in honours. And over here we have the pass paper. Okay. So just look what subjects were most popular for boys. What subjects were least popular for boys? And the next one, it's the same information, but this one is for girls. Okay. So if you look here, again, it gives you the list of subjects. It gives you the total number of people who were examined for honours, okay, in 1926, and again in 1927, total number examined for honours. So again, girls, look at the subjects here, and can you make any judgments about certain subjects? Okay, if you look at these subjects down here, your science subjects, look at the numbers there. And if I go back to the boys slide, If we look at your science subjects, in the boys, you can see there that there are a greater number in taking those science subjects for boys. Okay, so girls, that's the end of the lesson there. You have some notes to take down. You're going to need this information here from those 4 slides to help you with your homework. So your homework is to write a diary of a girl in school in the 1920s. So I've put some links there on the Google Classroom of some websites that I want you to use to help you, and I've put the guidelines on the Google Classroom as well. So if you can type that up for me onto Google Docs and send it in through the Google Classroom.